It's not. It's
Can call the meeting to order, please.
I've done some.
The early start. So welcome everybody, and earlier than normal start, which we talked about at our last meeting, and just in terms of the additional information that we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to start with karakia. Please feel free to join me. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai, e he aki ana te atakura, e teo, e hoka, e huho, te hei, moriora. Do we have any apologies, Councillor?
Not from the executive, I don't think.
Not on this one. No apologies. Any declarations of interest that we need to be aware of?
Oh, I'm going to say at some point, I saw in my interest declaration slip that I was still on as the Happy Me Trust, Happy Me Theatre Trust groups, but that's now been decided.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Urgent business, no public forum today. So we'll go straight to the minutes on page 9. Any questions? Page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. I just noted the addition into the induction process around iwi boundaries. Page 14, 15, 16. So, Sharon, just a question of you. our new audit director. Is that person known to us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was, and they were meant to, come down and meet us last week, I think, but they've had a medical event with one of their partners, and so they've got to go back to the OAG and rejig everything. We were initially told we were getting a partner called Mike Hawken, but now they're back at the drawing board, and we will find out when they know, which is getting quite close.
Yeah. So are we going to schedule a meeting with the new audit director for the committee?
Yes.
Good.
Same way that we had it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'll just get them down first off, and Hayley will come down with them and introduce them and give you their bio, their background, how it came about, and then from there you choose when they'll come before the audit and do their planning report, they'll come after it and do their feedback as they always have. You'll have your counsellor any time. So yeah, it'll be the same process, but she'll bring them down first.
And adoption of the audit plan for the year.
Yes, just I have the mayor has a one-on-one with them.
Yeah, and the importance of this one, of course, election coming up, to make sure that the work plan and the timetabling are in place to enable this council to adopt the annual report for the year ended 30th of June 2025. What are we up to? Page 17 and page 18. So do I have a mover?
Happy to move.
Councillor Herbert, seconded Councillor Graham. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Page 19, my report, very brief report this time. And I guess it's the result of our last meeting where we had discussion on content of reports, variation to the content, the emphasis. Is it providing the information that we want? Are we heading in the right direction? I've met with staff prior to today and also earlier this morning. It's talked about the conversation that I hope we have around the content of the new reports. Have we met the mark? Have they given you the information that you want? Are there still some gaps there? And we'll just work through that. So we're looking for a more complete report set in the May meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, from my point of view, I've written down a lot of questions when I went through it. It took a long time to get through, so something different was happening. So I'm happy with it. The only hesitation I have is that in the past, I've read 100 pages and never had the one line that said, there is a problem here. There is the bomb. So I keep on looking here, but I am always thinking, what am I missing? So that has been the fault for me. Well, you read 100 pages, you miss one line. And in that one line is everything. So just as long as we're not overwhelmed with information, and if it is a problem, it's in dirty, great, big, bold writing that even an old boomer like me can find.
Sure, and don't forget that we were also looking at exception reporting as well to try and address any of those issues as they may come up.
Yeah, I thought it was good though, Dave. Thank you.
So my brief report, I will move. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Finch. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item number 3, Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report is just an update on the work plan that we discussed at the last meeting and decided on. And I just want to note that there's some things in red, and that is just because the timing of those has moved around workloads and staff absences and stuff. And the mandatory documents register has been brought back. We just brought it back early. We thought it was actually out on the 24th of July, but we think it's timely to actually visit that earlier. That's just how we fit within the legal requirements we have, how we go through each of the acts, and just each person checks that they're complying with the acts. We do that twice a year. So that's it.
Any questions of Sharon? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, so just trying to think where our real risk lies in that 3rd of September, water done well, the acceptance of your water plan. And we've got a meeting on the 4th of September. It's going to be so critical around there. I wonder that whether 2 days after the water plan, and then I'm thinking it's probably even before. It's trying to crystal ball. There just seems to be some huge gaps, and that's smack we're into the election. I don't know whether there's any way around it, but maybe the only question I had was whether that 4th of September got pushed back a week so that we have longer time to. I think there's going to be some real movement in councils that can't do a water plan, that fail in their water plan, and all hell's going to break out. And we've got 2 days, as it has, for the most important meeting, for the risk to this organisation, because it's huge.
We do have availability on the 11th of September.
Yeah. I just sort of think, we know that date of the 3rd of, what is it, the 3rd? So it's only 1 day before, it doesn't really give us any time.
Yeah, I understand that. If we were to apply flexibility and alter the 4th until the 11th, would that, I know it's 6 months out, but is that ringing alarm bells for anybody? I'm also conscious of the fact that we will be meeting probably in a brief form to sign off on the annual plan recommendations to council prior to the final council meeting as well.
It's the whole logistics of you coming down, it's the last one, it's everything I know, but 3rd of September, water plan's due, 4th of September, we have our ordinary risk. It's not given any chance to, I don't know, what's your thoughts?
Should we not be having a meeting before the 3rd of September?
Also, I don't know, that's the problem, I don't know how it's going to
Why are
work.
we waiting till after when we've had to sign and do it? Would you be having a meeting before?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think realistically it's going to have to be finalised a long way before that. That's like it actually has to be submitted, and probably before it's submitted, discussed with the DIA, because you don't want it to be rejected by that stage. So, like an annual plan and like any of those range of real big documents, it will have to be pretty much finalised at least a few weeks before that.
So we're going back to August almost.
Going back to August, yeah. So, look, the advice I would give is flexibility. There's a lot in front of us, both in terms of the water plan, but also in terms of the annual report as well, to get that signed off.
Then possibly we just have a note beside it that there is flexibility to that date, considering everything that's happening.
Everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Rather than lock and load it. I just see them coming back in a heck of a hurry with, if someone doesn't do it, where do they go? They'll get pushed our way.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, should it even be added as a category A project?
Yeah.
The whole Three Waters.
I think that's an eminently sensible suggestion, yes.
Until September anyway.
Just for completeness, isn't it? With that change, is everyone happy? Mover for the report. Councillor Ludeman, Councillor Volwheeler, all in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Page 22, risk status report, Jules and Linda.
So yes, we don't have any microphones, so everyone will have to come up to the front this time round. So happy to take that report as read. We have made some significant changes to this because as it was written previously, it mostly focused on external contractors. Now a lot of the treatment risk is being dealt with directly by CDC staff. We've done quite a significant update to the risk profile. However, we're still recommending it is still has an inherently high risk, and we would be wanting to see removal of boil water notices and in terms of a lot more green lights in terms of wastewater compliance before that was removed. And that may require, well, it will require capital upgrades in some instances. So happy to take that as read, and both Linda and I are available to answer questions.
Any questions, queries, further explanation from anybody? Councillor?
Just on page 24, Mr. Chairman, it says improvement plans identified and implemented. It's got the status 10%. Is what's meant by that exactly?
Yes, so those are the projects identified in the activity management plan that are underway, so partially complete, delivered.
So that
There's a lot in that plan.
10% is, sorry,
That would be an accurate
and accurate.
assessment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I did that as well.
Linda, point 14 talks about independent testing of suppliers undertaken. How frequently is that independent testing done?
So we do testing daily on some things. So we have a routine sampling regime. So that is everything that meets the legislative requirements and consent requirements if it's wastewater. And those tests are done. Also, the operators do some testing in-house, but everything that is required to be reported to regulators is done by the external party. And they get the reports at the same time we do. There was issues previously, as I understand it, where things weren't getting reported in a timely manner. So now they get the heads up as soon as we do.
And long weekend, I assume there's rostering key staff over long weekends.
Correct.
Yeah, cool. Other questions from anybody, Mr. Mayor?
Linda, is, how Mount Arawa has just taken over certain parts of the wastewater as well as the water. Do you see that as being a real problem for us? Because I was listening to sort of the basis of it, and what they're now saying is it's not the environment that it's released into, it's in the in-pipe. I'm thinking, well, hold on a minute. We've got that dirty great big Clutha River, and yet we've got a Lawrence Creek, and yet the standard is in the pipe. Shouldn't we be vigorously going against that? Because by the time it goes out into the Clutha River, it's gone. By the time it goes into the Lawrence or the Clinton, it's not. So what are we doing right now to push back against that? Because it should be what we're putting it into, surely, especially when our catchments change that.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, the proposed wastewater standards, they're up for consultation at the moment. They only deal with new consents. They don't deal with existing consents. So if we're struggling with our existing consents and we need to apply for a new one, they will be under those rules. Now, the new standards actually do take into account the receiving environment. There's 7 different categories of receiving environment, and different receiving environments, depending on the level of mixing, have different limits. So for a small receiving environment like Lawrence, Tupeka Creek, it'll have a lower ammonia limit, for example, for our discharge than the one going to the Clutha River. So they do take into account that. Coastal, for example, if you've got an offshore discharge, there are no limits on a lot of things. But if you've got a discharge that's close to the shore, like we have at Carter Point, then there are limits on enterococci and those sorts of things. So the receiving environment is taken into account in those 7 different categories in the proposed standards.
They were adamant the other day that it is now in pipe.
Yeah, it is. It is end of pipe standards, but it changes depending on the receiving environment you're going into it. And the category for that is the level of dilution. So the Clutha has a much higher level of dilution. Small things that are discharging into that will have a higher available higher end of pipe limit than something that's going into a much smaller waterway.
So we're going to submit.
We're intending to submit, and Ian Evans is doing some work on that with the intent of bringing it back to council for feedback. And we do. I mean, the submission will be in support of some aspects of it, but there has been a lot of work that's gone into it. So we need to be careful because we won't be able to do the level of work that's gone into developing them. But we certainly intend to make a submission, and we'll bring back at least some draft points for consideration by council before that's being finalised.
So this, Councillor Herbert, sorry.
Thank you. And I'm really interested in number 5 there on page 23, where you talk about the relationship with Tangata Arawa and ORC being perhaps better than it has been and what have you. So can you give me some sort of idea of how those meetings actually evolve? Is it us sitting there being told what's happening, or is it an open and frank conversation? Are they open to some pushback and negotiation, or is it just a matter of us being told what the next round of compliance looks like?
I think the meetings run differently with each of the organisations. So the relationship with Te Mara Arawai has probably benefited from the appointment of Daniel Pickard into our team. So Daniel formerly worked for Te Mara Arawai, trained the current senior regulator, I think he is, who focuses a lot on us. So it's more of a two-way conversation. So we are seeking advice from them but we've also pushed back on some things. So I think it's quite a two-way. And I guess the other thing I'd suggest is that I don't want to say it and jinx it, but they've kind of left us alone to get on with things for a while, and that's because we've shown improvement, and so they're not focusing on us as much as they were, or as much as it felt like. The ORC is probably different. It's more, we're dealing with different levels of people, and so there is probably a bit of tension, but that tension is healthy in terms of us not accepting some of the findings that they've got and pushing back.
Thank you.
And escalating that if we need to.
And through you, Mr. Chair, and also discussing how we move forward and address some long-standing issues as well. So, that's going to be an ongoing process.
So this is identified risk number 3. Question I've got of committee members, are you comfortable with the risks that have been identified, with the controls that are in place, and you're satisfied going forward? I know that every event is same but different. We always learn something new, but are you comfortable, based on the knowledge that we have at the moment, that the controls are appropriate for the risks that are perceived to be out there?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, is this specifically for number 3?
Specifically for this report, Mr. Mayor.
This report is
Oh,
not.
the whole, so you did say number
This
three.
is risk number 3.
Oh, sorry, I looked at collaboration and partnership. And now I have number 3. Sorry.
So everyone's comfortable? Okay, do we have a mover?
Move.
Councillor Graham, Councillor Finch. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I will. I'll throw it in there because my number 3, if you look at number 3 in the small print, collaboration and partnership, we were discussing at the executive this morning, the lack of information, the inability for councillors to do due diligence before something like 11 days or something before you have to do your preferred option. It's 8 weeks before we have to make the biggest decision this council's ever made. I'm terrified about the level of information and the information flow and the ability for the councillors to perform their tasks.
I've been talking in recent weeks to councillors from a number of authorities around the South Island particularly, and that's a common theme that's coming through, so it's just not unique to you, Mr. Mayor. And I think the country's about to get some interesting information in terms of the costs, the process going forward.
I think for us from an audit and risk, we need to know, because I've never been in this situation, and I know that the councillors, right at the moment, could change. It can be a metamorphosis, but it could change, but right at the moment. So what is the, still like the moral, legal, what, if a councillor knows in their heart of heart that they don't have the information, what do?
They ask the question of the chair or of the key executive members, chief executive, acting chief executive.
And if on the day that
They've
it
got a
comes to
question
the
asked.
vote, should they vote?
They should have all the information to enable them to vote. So that's up to individuals, Mr. Mayor, to make sure that if you've got a question, ask the question. It's advice I give to councillors around the country. Is that if you've got something to ask, if you need something, the avoidance of doubt, get it on the table. Do not turn up at the meeting where you're making the decision and ask that question then. Councillor Ludeman.
So I agree with that comment, but how do you get all councillors to actually participate and be on board? I mean, we had a rural water scheme meeting yesterday, and certainly not even half councillors here. Well, maybe by the ones from Zoom. So sorry, there were some by Zoom, but for the ones that weren't there, all these parts are part of when they come to vote. So there's a real risk to me of you've got some that haven't been party to all the discussions and they're going to vote. So what is audit and risk? What do we do about that?
I think it applies to any decision that council is making, not exclusively to Three Waters. So if there are concerns, that would be addressed with the mayor in the first instance, with the chair and with the chief executive. But I mean, it is a difficult decision that is not exclusively for this council. Everybody's about to go through the same discussion. It's community, it's media understanding, it's taking that future focus. Where are we really going? And how confident are you with the information that you're basing your decision on?
So if I could give the example that most concerns me, we had indication, it hasn't been gazetted, it's not law, but the government's given an indication on a change in standards to the sewerage upgrades. That the indication was, so Jules, we did our assumptions from our last audited figures, which was last year's long-term plan, and felt that we could take a 70% discount. At the same time, our collaborative partners, Waikaki, altered the figures and then did a 50. So we were already too different then. Central Otago just did a straight 50, and of course they didn't have the capacity to do anything. So we've got 4 different figures floating around as we make the big decisions. Then Timaru's come in, haven't even got a clue where they are. And then the government said, you know, all those 40s, 70s, whatever, we're indicating 40%. Unfortunately, that's up for discussion, it's out for consultation, and we'll finish our process after you've done yours. So consequently, right from the start, I know that the figures we were basing on were wrong. Then I know that the changes are there. So you're saying that you've got the information. I already know it's not going to be there. On what it's about 16% of what we do in Three Waters is the surge. So it was $101 million over the next 10 years. It's big enough that, oh yeah, there's 20, 30, $40 million of debt or rates or something. But that's just one thing that's coming through that. And I've been swimming through this, and I know the councillors haven't even started swimming through it. You're going to come up with a preferred decision in 11 days. What? I'm really, on your behalf, I'm speaking, but you should be doing the speaking for you because I haven't got a clue what you're voting.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, I absolutely agree. There's certainly a lot of uncertainty, and however, there is, and we will have the reports and the background information for you in plenty of time. It's about 150 pages, so we want to make sure you've got time to actually digest that and go through that quite in a bit of detail. Morrison Lowe they've proposed in the design of the new organisation to take into account those uncertainties that have been raised by Mayor Cadogan in terms of actually say, like in the part of the agreement they've proposed is that they're estimating there will be benefits from going to a multi-council CCO, but it will be based on the investment that's required in each area. So if someone has fudged the figures and there needs to be more investment, then that'll be reflected in what they pay through that CCO process. So the CCO will say, actually, you do need a different level of investment, and they are talking about geographic pricing for at least for the start of the process, but that's still to be determined through the structure. There's also been a bit of independent work done to look at all of the council's proposed capital works and try and benchmark them against each other to identify exactly those key issues. So that will be part of what's presented to you to consider for the April 3rd decision as well. So we're trying to take into account in the design those things that may be uncertain at this stage, and make sure that's designed into being fair moving forward. But there will be uncertainty, and you'll need to be weighing that up when you're looking at that information.
Another one, Mr. Chair, is the timing of harmonisation. Clutha District, out of the 5, goes first and goes fast, and then drops off. So we're definitely needing help in the first 7 years, and then our graph goes like that. Everyone else goes up. So the timing of when we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya is critical. But there is conversations, and we're 11 days out type thing. Oh, let's wait. We'll do that in 7 years' time. And I'm thinking, well, hold on a minute. If we wait for 7 years, we've spent all our money, we've done everything. So we wear that, the debt's ours, it's ours. So all we're doing is just loading up. But I don't think we'll ever get the Clutha-centric perspective of it to know whether we're making the right decision and the implications of the timing. And for other ones, they see it and they're really pushing hard. We're 11 days out. Good luck.
One of the dangers is that everyone's talking about how better off we're going to be in 30 plus years. There are so many unknowns in 30 plus years. You cannot with any certainty say that is what the cost is going to be in the year 2050 or whatever the year may be. It's around, are we confident with the information? Are we confident with our assumptions? And are we flexible enough to respond to changes in those assumptions? I mean, since this exercise has started, we've seen the international events which have caused the interest rates to drop and continue to drop. It's quite significant, the impact that's having.
I'm happy to have that. Those that, like the Scottish water model figures, quite a few got hung up on that. Come on, it's trajectories and indications. But what I mean is these are structures. The date of harmonisation, the voting structure around the table, the 40%, 70%, 50%, these are structures that, our long-term plan has never ever had year 2 actually ever happen. It never does, no one starts, I get that. But some of the structure that you're lining up with, that's structure, it's when do we harmonise? How many votes are around the table? Does Timaru get 2, Sand they're twice as big? Does Gore get half? All these things. So fundamentals. And we're 11 days away. So I want to sort of record it. I am more worried about this vote and the ability for councillors to do their due diligence than I ever have in 27 years.
So rather than have the debate now that we're going to have in 11 days' time, my advice to councillors is if you have a question, ask that question. Don't wait for a meeting scenario. Get on the phone, get on the email, drive in, have a chat to key staff, all staff. I mean, as it affects councillors, it affects staff and it affects the community. So it's an all-in scenario that we're talking about. Right, any other questions on the report that Linda and Jules have presented? If not, do we have a mover for that report? Councillor Graham, Councillor Ludeman, all in favour? Aye. Against, carried. Item 5 is the register of interest, which is there for information. I guess my question is in terms of completeness. Mr. Mayor, you've already raised one issue around your interest. Councillor Finch.
I have one. Has there been reappointment for the ex-councillor Barron down there after he resigned?
Sorry, you are...
Riverside Reserve Management Subcommittee.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Has that been?
We decided we just hold over on his, I think was the decision. Hasn't been
Is everyone else comfortable with the accuracy of this report? Councillor Kennedy?
Mercer Trust can come off.
Say that again.
Mercer Trust.
Thank you. Got it. Everyone else, Councillor Herbert?
Thank you. It seems that Councillor Graham and I are on what's called the Consent Liaison Working Party. I've never heard of it, or have I heard of it?
It hasn't really been, through you, Mr. Chair, it hasn't really been active for probably 15 years, which has probably been one of our historic problems. But in terms of that, I suppose the really good work that Livy and Christina are doing with our EV partners have probably overtaken the intent of that. So that would be we would look to review that at the start of the next training, because we haven't had a meeting for about 15 years.
You know, I'm unaware of being involved in it anyway.
Yeah, of course it's that one. Councillor Luke,
you explain?
Clutha Community Hub, I think I'd probably take that off, because the group that was formed for Clutha Community Hub is kind of no longer. There's really just the trust doing it now. That other group kind of has disbanded, so.
Right, we can remove that. Everyone else comfortable with your identified areas of responsibility?
Well, it is though for me, Mr. Chair, regarding the Clutha Community Hub, I see it's noted as Te Paumato trustee. Well, I'm actually council representative now. It needs to be
Yes, I
tweaked.
Yeah.
Sorry, David.
You're right.
Just going through the Marflat water scheme and the Glen Kennick one. John does, not me. Or are you on them as well?
I think we got both of us on it last time. I think you wanted to be on it.
I will leave it there.
Leave it for you.
To review it.
Leave it there.
Everyone else happy? And who's happy enough to move the report? Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Bolwheeler. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is carried. Right, we now come to that part of the meeting which caused us to be here an hour earlier this morning, where we look at the Category A reports. These are the ones that normally look at the project control group. What I'm interested to know with these is the purpose, the reason that we're having these reports at risk and assurance is because of those gaps in information that you shared with me in terms of risk, in terms of cost, in terms of impact, service delivery, all of those things associated with these quite significant projects. And the suggestion was that we formally receive the reports, very well prepared reports with good detail in a formal sense. So what I'm interested in the debate today after the reports have been presented, are you getting the information? Do these provide you individually with the information to respond to those things? So the first presenter is Donna. Report on page 33.
Morning, everybody. So the summary report on page 33, we'll just take that as read if you have any questions. Otherwise, I can ask the team to start coming up and talking through the individual attached reports.
Sorry, Councillor Kennedy.
I'm going to be a bugbear right at the start. Sorry, Donna, through you, Chair. Is some of the abbreviations, like there was one part there I was reading and there was a car going somewhere and then I realised, no, it's not a car, it's a CAR. If we can just have a little ditty of what the abbreviations are. Sorry.
Absolutely. So through the chair, that's lessons learning for the team presenting to these committees, that we actually, the first time you make comment on an acronym, you actually write the whole wording and then put acronym in the bracket. So thank you for that.
Just under projects A to D, it's got PCG group of projects still, or it's not PCG anymore, is it?
No, it's risk and assurance. Yes, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just at page 34, since that's first up, the ERP upgrade, and that's a fairly significant event or project. Just as confidence that I know it was postponed for a year, confidence that we're going to achieve that by the 1st of July without any issues, or all going well.
Through the chair, I'll ask you to respond to that because it's not
Thank
in
you,
my
Mr. Chair.
portfolio.
Yes, much more confident this year. There's still a lot of work to do, and hence you can read that in this report. We've still got a lot to do. We've pretty much set aside May and June and some of the staff are already doing nothing but this for 3 or 4 days a week. And it's hitting different parts of the organisation at different times. But yeah, we have a this cannot fail attitude. So it's new, it's exciting, it's different. There's a long way to go. But yeah, very confident that we will have, it may not be perfect in all modules, but we will definitely have the things that have to happen on the 1st of July done. So we'll be able to pay a bill, be able to register a dog, all those sorts of things, but we might not be able to have a perfect schedule of our assets. So, yes.
But it will be fit for purpose for developing the annual report. It won't be
through
used
Mr.
for the
Chair.
annual report this time.
No, not this time.
Right. Sorry.
But there will be some things that have to be done in parallel, like we will strike the rates twice, one in each system, just to make sure it is doing what we expect. But, you know, there might be a few cents different, and they've sort of said that that's why we couldn't go partway through the year, because it would never line up because of rounding of a few cents per property or something. So we'll be striking the rates, and I'll look at my property and go, this is what it says here, this is what it says there. Yep, I'm happy. So just those assurances. There'll be a lot of checks along the way. There'll be a lot of things that are done twice for the space of a month.
The testing phase will always be the key. So it's a matter of having that time to be able to do that well in advance.
Thank you.
Other questions of Donald?
So, yeah, firstly, I'll be a wee bit more pointed possibly than Councillor Wheeler, because down on bullet point there for rugs. So as I read it, this new process will involve getting the rates in. Also, it's April, which is one of the quarters. You said you'll be ready in July, but in April you said when it's scheduled for April. Is there any possibility there could be a disruption to the rates intake and cash flow?
I'm through you, Mr. Chair. No. What we're doing in April and what we've done already is we're taking a cut of the current year's data, putting that into Datascape and comparing it to what we have to make sure the rate types are going through correctly to properties. You know, it's the same in this system to that system.
Yep.
And then we're still collecting our rates as we would in our normal system. And on the 1st of July, all the property data, the rate types, everything should be correct. We have to put the factors in. Like, so the UAGC amount, the roading rates amounts, all those things. And we'll calculate it. So this year's will not change at all. It's just what we're doing now is putting it in and checking that it is the same. It's carrying forward correctly. It's getting imported correctly. And we're doing that for everything, our contacts, our creditors, our assets, our GLs, our rates, everything. They take a cut of data out of our system, put it into the new one, and then we have to compare everything.
So I just want to labour the point, because you had said July and it was April. Then the other one probably is for you, Donna, on the next page, on page 35. We pushed a few projects back, halfway down to 35, review these projects and defer. The projects that we defer, there's no possibility that by deferring them we're going to run into litigious risk.
So through you, Chair, we've done quite a strategic approach, and we've worked really closely with finance with this as well, because what we're trying to achieve is to keep projects running, keep the contractors in work, but slow the progress down so that it didn't impact the rates as significantly as it was going to initially. So we're actually still going out to tender, which in case we then, once we award, the contractors are obligated to honour those prices. But a lot of the work that we're tendering won't be commencing. Will either be starting to commence later on in this financial year or predominantly next financial year. And that was a very strategic decision that we made.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, I think the really other key thing to note there is, as part of the LTP process, there was that 15% reduction in the program because we haven't achieved it previously. There's also the discussion we had about treating the urban three waters as a portfolio of work. So where we've identified there isn't actually a job, and you may have noted, some of the councillors noted that there was a budget for a Kaitanga to stormwater renewal, but that's been reallocated to Lawrence because we identified we didn't actually need to do that pipeline. But the Colonsay Street pipe in Lawrence needed a slightly bigger scope. So those things are noted through standing committees. So if there are questions about that, please feel free to highlight those. We're only making those changes in program as much as possible within the same activity area, and not, if it's something that would affect something that would provide a risk, like a compliance project, we would be coming back to council to ask to reallocate those. So it's only those renewal type projects as much as possible where we're looking to get the work done within that water portfolio, that urban water portfolio. That doesn't happen in the rural water work.
Carry on, Donna.
I was just going to say, annual, now that we've got our asset management team structure in place, the team will be working on a more strategic asset management program, and we'll be developing a team to get to that level as
And the deferral's not having any impact on consenting issues? Good. Right, councillor Finch.
The contracts, this is on page 36, and there's 4 booster pump stations on the Greenfield scheme and 1 on the Milton Waihola scheme. So I would have thought there'd be different contracts, surely. No? For different pricing, to be charged different funds?
Through the chair, so decisions were made that the 2 contracts were brought into one project because it had better cost efficiencies. Once we start talking about the individual reports, I'm very happy to ask the project managers to come up and talk and answer. If you're comfortable with that.
Yep, sorry to you, Mr Chair. It is different pricing. It was tendered to do those different parts of the project. So the Milton Waihola pipeline was only paying for the tendered price for their pump station.
Right.
But it was just let under a single contract because it's similar work.
Right. And what's the cut and tie-in? Can you explain about that? Cut and tie-in works can only be carried out by the maintenance contractor.
Through you, the chair, our operations team through Waters made this decision that rather than our contractors working on our infrastructure, that the maintenance contractor should do the work. Linda, if there's anything you want to.
So what actually is a cut and tie-in?
So it's when you're cutting into a main and you're connecting new pipe work. So the reason we want our contractor to do it is that there's hygiene standards to be followed and to make sure the work is done to a standard. Because we don't often know who the contractors are employing, but we know who our RETIC contractor is employing and what level of qualifications they've got.
Great.
And they complete a hygiene certificate for every job they complete, so that we've got that for the regulator.
Great, thank you. The ball fields, there's going to be a smaller size, so does that mean it's cheaper, more cost effective for us?
Through you, could I ask Dan to come up and maybe start talking about his project into the detail?
Yeah.
I think it's probably better. I mean, I can answer that, but I think
No,
it's
that's
better
fine.
for the project manager.
So you revisited the decision to size the pump to a realistic growth period, 15 to 20 years instead of 120 year growth.
Yeah, that's correct. And so there was some price reduction due to the size of the pump, some savings.
Great. So it's a lot cheaper. Yes.
Not a lot. Through you, it's a reduction.
Yeah.
I think through you, Mr Chair, too, the key reason for that is we want it to be running at the range it's actually going to be running for most of the time, because otherwise it won't be efficient either.
Yeah.
So it's important that it's sized appropriately, but can be increased for growth in the future.
Yeah, that's great. There was an asterisk on page 38 in your job codes in the budget, but there was nothing telling me what the asterisk was for. Balmoral Topeka Rural Water Scheme in Lawrence New Supply, and it's got the figure there and an asterisk.
$5 million.
Oh, I can answer that through the chair. So apologies, that must have been missed off. That's actually just identifying that that was the increased budget value that was approved at our council meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Danbar, welcome. Do you want to speak to your report starting on page 36?
Thank you, through the chair. Yep. Good morning, everyone. So I take it report is read, but I'll go through the report.
Okay.
Summary. So starting from job status summary, contract 850 pipeline installation. In that contract, the only work left is for tie-in and cut-in to do for the Lawrence Township. And there was a question about the car, which is lesson learned, and car is corridor access request.
Thank you.
Can you explain who that's with too?
And the car is usually approved by our in-house roading team, roading department, and they look at all the required documents. We submit to them our plan of work, and the approval time is usually 4 weeks.
So just to assist with that a bit more detail, anytime any member of the public or contractor is wanting access to the roading networks, whether it's our local roads or the NZTA state highways, every contractor must apply for a corridor access request. And there's standards of the requirements that they must adhere to and meet.
Moving ahead with contract 865. To answer the question, there was question that we have 3 booster pump at Greenfield and 1 at Milton Waihola scheme. In that, it is in one contract, but the price and the cost, we have different cost code and different budget for each of those works. So whatever work which is being done on Milton Waihola scheme is costed and coded to Milton Waihola portion of the cost code, and all the job and work which is done under the Greenfield scheme is getting coded and cost to Greenfield scheme differently. And bore-field work, yeah, we have revisited our decision to downsize our pump to make it more realistic and keep it running all the time for our bores, and also it will accommodate growth rate for another 15 to 20 years, which is usually the lifespan of the pumps. Water treatment plant work are progressing really rapidly and it's under construction. Building is, this photo I have submitted, it's 3 weeks old. It's almost completed the building work. Outer, now we have started doing inside insulation and lining. Plan activities for next month is to continue working on treatment plant and borefield work and do pre-commissioning work of our 3 pump station and grid field scheme, which will help us to commission those pump station quickly when we commission the whole scheme. And we have project risks. The first one, financial risks, we have now covered that, and from next report it will be excluded. We have done everything on the groundwater quality or testing, and everything is done now. On following that, we downsize our pump as well. So there will be no longer any financial risks in coming next one if anything doesn't arise. And I don't see any possible anything arising on financial risks on this one, right there. And program risks, we do have a very big risk on delivery of our reservoir. It is supposed, we are expecting the reservoir will be delivered to our New Zealand shore on Christchurch by 24th of March, but we don't have confirmation yet. This date was confirmed when it was put into the ship and sailed from Australia to New Zealand.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, too, the reservoir we're referring to is the main clear water reservoir at the treatment plant. So that needs to be in place for it to be compliant and to lift the boil water notice, because it needs a certain amount of contact time for chlorine. So we did look at other options like other tanks, but it's not going to gain much for a lot of mucking around. Yeah.
Health and safety, we didn't have any reported incident or near miss. And we are tracking very well in financial project milestone. We are still working with our contractor to, if we can sort on the completion date, but this is the date which we are working towards right now, and also trying to work with our contractor to bring in more team to do works in pieces, separate work for separate teams. So it can, the different work can done simultaneously, and we can shorten the construction period and complete it before the date submitted by us and get it done.
I just want to give you clarity though, the milestones that Danbar is referring to there is for the water treatment plant, not for the full commissioning program. The full commissioning program, because of the reservoir late delivery of the reservoir tank, and then allowing a good, robust pre-commissioning and commissioning program. We're working on that at the moment in the background, but it's highly probable it will probably be fully commissioned by August.
It's a big scheme to commission, and it's going to be done in stages. With the Lawrence Township will be the last part of that, because it's currently got a compliant water supply. So, but yeah, we've got to do it in stages as different parts of the scheme come online.
So we're currently having weekly meetings with members of our teams, members of the Three Waters Operations team, members of Becca, where we started our first meeting last week, where Becca sort of talked everyone through the process of the commissioning plan and how we'll stage it. We've requested that they bring to our meeting next week the actual identified timelines associated with each section of the commissioning, along with, as a team approach, we will agree who is responsible and accountable for each of the tasks, and have the timelines as milestones, because it's significant, it's major.
So you're thinking the end of August, Donna?
Yes.
The final commissioning at this stage?
At this stage.
Before we leave.
Final commissioning of all is done.
Before we
Tell us about the financials. It's a significant sum. You're well into the project. You're confident still that it's being presented to budget?
Yes, and we do have some contingency in there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Can I take you back to contract 850? And there's a comment, final sentence said this work is planned to be completed by the end of March, subject to the CAR approval. Where are we at with that now, given that end of March is next week?
So CAR was a new corridor access request was submitted on second week of February,
Yeah.
and usual time process is 4 weeks. We are confident we'll get the approval by next week, and it's just 1 day work. Once we get the approval of the CAR request, it's just probably 1 or 2 days work to get this work completed.
Thank you.
However,
do you want to tell what the work is? The fencing and the access line?
So the 850 is pipeline. The work is just cutting the main line and tying in the new pipeline.
but however, we've had with the discussion with operations, we might actually delay that, because there's no point cutting it in until we get closer to when the scheme will be would be fully commissioned. So that's still under discussion with the operations team. So it's a risk if we've got to cut in to a supply that potentially has water that's on a boil water notes. So we just need to work through that with operations.
Okay. Councillor Graham?
Yeah.
Then Councillor Herbert.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I see on page 38 that you have to order well pumps. You don't envisage any trouble getting them, or are they locally? Or they, because in the past there's been plants that have been held up because they're waiting on pumps and that sort of stuff. So
Those pumps are locally sourced, and it comes off the shelf item.
oh right, excellent, thank you.
Councillor Herbert?
Thank you. Look, my first question is somewhat in jest, but I see there's a UV reactor sitting in the contractor's yard with nothing to do. There's probably a treatment plant at Tapanui could help you out with that. Given there was one that used to sit in Tapanui and it was taken away elsewhere, we might return the favour now if that was doable.
Different scheme, different budget,
Different
different
size.
community, different size.
Now, my second one, and it's just probably carrying on from what you're talking about, Donna, with the milestones and what have you. Do the people out there that are on the board let us know, are they aware of kind of when this, the program of the milestones and when this might actually be fully commissioned and their life might get back to normal? Are they aware of the sort of timelines? It's something that happens here a lot. You guys know the information, we know the information, but then it stops there and doesn't go to the public.
So through you, the Chair, so in the weekly meetings, we also have Di that is present, and that from that comms communication plans are decided and communicated out. So right this minute, I'm sorry, I can't answer whether or not they've been updated with these latest milestones. Not sure whether, no, by saying no, she's indicated to.
Through you, Chair, we only found the milestone updates on Monday.
Yep.
And we won't do an next update till we do a weekly boil water reminder, and those the reminders we provide updates.
Yep.
And
So they will find out. That's my question.
Yeah. I mean, they have to read it.
Yeah.
To keep
Yeah, I know,
updated,
because
but-
you do get a bit blasé. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on that, I've been reassuring people that it will be finished by the end of 2024. But then that March 2025, and then they've asked me again lately and said, no, it's definitely end of July. Just keeps rolling. But most people, if it's just been rolling with that board, would have noticed I'm yet to boil the jug yet. So I've had it over this last 3 years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Through you,
Right.
Chair, a
Donna.
lot of that was because we as a team made the decision that we need to have a really robust pre-commissioning and commissioning plan. We don't want to rush this.
Yeah,
We want to get it right.
nobody believes me when I tell them that it's going to be ready at the end. Yeah, they're looking at it.
Understood.
You want to come on and say
So
surprise?
they know it's coming. So, yeah.
Right, Donna, Deborah, thank you very much. Any other questions, or are we? Okay. So can we now have Cuban talking about the Milton Main Street utility, please? Welcome, and if you can just go through your report and take any questions that come from councillors, thank you.
No problem. Morning, everyone. I'm sure you also did the report, and we all aware Milton Main Street is nearly completed. So we just got last few days left of there to complete this project. My apologies on the financials. It's just a bit skewed this month. I'm still consolidating all the costing that's coming in, but to assure you all, everything is on track on the financials. Yeah, and then in early January, what we decided was we actually came across another stormwater pipeline towards the upper side of Abercrombie and Cowper. The stormwater was damaged over there and needed replacement as well. And at that stage, Donna was there doing the sealing of the road. I'm sure you guys noticed Donna was sealing the road over there.
Downer, not
Yeah.
looking at me.
Yes, so while they were there, we still implemented the project. We've got some additional budget over there for the stormwater pipe renewal. We implemented the project, and yes, we completed while Dana was in the facility as well. So in regards to pedestrian crossings, there was decisions made during the time of the Milton Main Street beautification projects that the pedestrian crossings will be moved. So at this stage, we had to move the pedestrian crossings, during the stormwater, we had to move the pedestrian crossings. Now we had to reinstate the pedestrian crossings. So firstly, we had to remove the pedestrian crossings. That was an additional cost to the project. Then we had to do a temporary reinstatement. That was another additional cost to the project. And now the permanent reinstatement is going to be another additional cost, not to this project, but that will be related to the Milton beautification project. So this decision was made prior to the beautification project being implemented.
We knew the pedestrian crossings were being moved, so why wasn't that in as part of the price then?
So through the chair, so These were historic scoping and design projects that our team, because we're a fairly newly formed team, had taken over.
Yeah.
But we also made the decision to do the undergrounding of the electrical requirements for pedestrian crossings in amongst Cuban's project, because it made logical sense, it made financial sense to do it now, as well as we realised that with NCTA doing the asphalt on the state highway, it would be a terrible look if later on when the beautification project came along, we ripped that up to do that.
Yeah.
So yes, it wasn't scoped in that project initially, because remember the underground infrastructure project and the beautification project have been on the books for a number of years.
Yeah.
And so now that we're finally getting the traction and delivering the project work, it was just it made much more sound financial decisions to do that work now, which wasn't in the original scope of this section of that project.
Right. Thank you. The defective stormwater pipe, was it damaged or had it been leaking for ages and it was just picked up? What was the story with that, please?
So it was leaking. It was leaking for a long period of time. When we did the extension, or in December when we did the extension to the stormwater, we didn't go right up to that portion of it. So after discussions with the teams, then we managed to find some budget for it, and we brought it into.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was an earthenware pipe that was all cracked in lots of places and that sort of thing, so it was really old.
So how was it
It's
picked
pretty
up?
small as well. It hadn't been working for a while in different places.
So this is part of the work that the asset management team is now starting to look more at the strategic lens, where if we know that there's historical exceptionally high maintenance costs or there's known issues with pipe work, strategically it makes more sense to do that work now, where we've got the contractors on site, got the machinery on site, and that's why we're using, with you'll see the asterisks with the financials underneath, where we're doing that Three Waters urban portfolio approach. Because in the long-term plan, we might have made decisions historically for set years, but as we're doing this discoverable work, we're actually seeing that there's a need, some assets need the work delivered now rather than waiting for 2 years.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I was really happy that it was done then before the resurfacing was done. It's really good. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just on the health and safety, I see there's a few bicycle accidents on the footpath. Just puzzles me a wee bit.
They shouldn't have been on the footpath.
What was the bike doing on the footpath? I don't know, this is just from an RTC perspective.
So the bike shouldn't be on the footpath anyway. So sure.
That's all there is to it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I just have a clarification? Is Cuban finished presenting his report and we're into questioning? Because I didn't know that he was finished.
Not quite.
Thank you.
So we want to go back to the footpath?
Yeah.
Yes, in regards to the footpath over there, so yes, because we were, the resealing of the footpath is happening now at this current time. So there were just incidents where, reported that it was, because of the gravel, that's the reason it was reported to us that, when we're going to seal it as such. So that was the risks involved with it.
Good. So we're okay now?
Yeah, can I continue? We good?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so in regards to planned activities, which we are currently now in March, the footpath resealing is happening at the moment. We still contemplate and completing by next week. I'm sure you'll see the contractors on site currently. Yes, and there's nothing else to highlight, to be honest with you.
I think we just need to look at your item number 8 on page 43. Huge amount of work has been completed. It really has. Questions? Councillor Finch.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
I'd like to say it looks really, really good. I've had some really great feedback from it. There was a few issues brought up with the footpath and I see there was a reply in that, so that's still going to be finished in the time?
Through you, Chair. So I sent an email out to councillors yesterday in regards to that. So the team is still working closely with the contractors once the compliance request form is sent through them, which I believe was done yesterday.
Right.
That the subcontractor will be notified by the contractor, and that peer work will be done with no expense to council.
Great, because there was quite a lip between where they'd finished one lot of sealing and the next, just before the museum, and that would definitely be a trip hazard. There was something else I was going to say.
There was a number of defects, and so I mean, I hope I didn't get too technical in my response. I tried to hold it back.
No,
but
that's good.
It was very clear that a lot of the baseline coursework hadn't been compacted to the level of requirement. The gradients weren't aligned to the asphalt quality. We're wanting to get the results on that, the clear testing results. So there's a lot of work that the team have done in the background, and we have had a good, strong, robust discussion where our team will be doing more like MSQ8, so the quality assurance work associated prior, during, and after.
Good, yes. Yeah, because there was definitely issues. Thank you very much for all that work.
So we don't see delays at this stage, but it'll depend on the subcontractor.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Mr Mayor, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Hugely critical question too, I might add, because I went and saw Sharon yesterday about the figures, and was the underline. If I took that aside, there's 2 red boxes and there's 2 green boxes. The reason I ask is, in my memory falters, I suspect, but Colin, the boss of Colin Calcio, reckons I did a 224 pack bet with him that it'd be on time and on budget. Helicopter view, because he's hit me up for payment. Helicopter view, is this project on time and on budget?
So through you, Chair, yes, it is on time, and without doing the additional works that we've done, which is over and above the scope of the project that Kevin's just mentioned, where we've done the additional pipeline work, we've done a whole lot of stormwater work, which wasn't in the budgets. We've done the Urban 3 Water Portfolio approach, where I've basically taken from budgets from other projects that we weren't starting this financial year and utilising those funds.
So you can't say.
Pay up.
Pay up. There we go. Yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
Last question, Councillor.
Remembered what the other one I was going to ask, and it's in somewhere else in a report. I thought the main street was going to be done in concrete, and it has got out in somewhere, I read it, that it was going to be concrete.
Yes, I cannot answer. I know my delegation was like for like.
Concrete footpath, but.
And it is written somewhere that, and I can't remember where it is, I've got it highlighted wherever it is, that it was going to be done in concrete. The main footpaths in Milton.
I can't recall that. So I would have to review, and we've replaced like for like material.
Through you, Mr Chairman, too, we don't normally do that in central areas because they get dug up so often, and it's much easier to do a patch. We definitely do it. Concrete is our stock standard away from sort of those main areas, but exactly like with Belclutha, we asphalted back there because it does get dug up and it's easier to patch it without it looking a bit different, which after a few years, a concrete patch will be white compared to a dark grey bit of concrete. So in those central areas, we do normally use asphalt.
Thank you. That makes complete sense.
Thank you, Cuban. Thank you very much. We now have the presenters on the Mount Kui report, please.
For you, Mr Chairman, there's just one update on this too regarding the tender process for the next stage of the project, which if I can verbally just give an update on that.
Sorry, through you, Chair. So the other part of this project is the streetscape project, or I call it the beautification one, just simple for my mind to remember the 2 of them. The tender process has closed and the team have been doing evaluations, and we're looking forward to receiving the recommendation of which contractor and which options, which will be tabled at the 3rd of April council meeting for council decision. If you recall, the decision was made, the beautification project $2.25 million budget, that we went out with 3 options of designs, and that the results and the decisions would come back to council for your decision on the 3rd of April.
Many put in.
3 tenders. 3 tenders.
There was a number, we can't really confirm that at this stage.
Thank you. Right, Mount Kui project report presenters. Cosmos, Kevin and Kelly.
Kelly's not here today. Unfortunately, he's not well, so other people will be standing in for Kelly's reports throughout the day.
Robin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to speak to the consent application updates, and then Kuben will speak on the construction of the transfer station.
You might need to speak up just so the microphone in the middle.
Thank you. Right, in terms of the consent application, we are at the stage where we are engaging submitters who made submissions on the notification. And the idea is we've looked at the submissions that they've made, and we think that the issues that they raised can be addressed through consent conditions. And so what we're doing is we're updating the conditions that we are proposing, and then we speak to the submitters about those conditions. If they're happy with those conditions, then we can ask them to draw their request to be heard at a hearing. So we're just basically managing the risk that if we go to a hearing, which is managed by statutory requirements, the amount of time and cost that it will take will increase the delay for the delivery of the consent. So this is where we are in terms of the consent application. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them before Kevin comes for the construction.
Councillor Finch.
Thank you. You've said about updating the consent conditions. Can you tell us what they are?
Livy, do you want to? Livy might. Livy's helpful with it.
Morning, so I've just been supporting with this application since it's in the planning sphere, and it's a regional council consent, so there's no conflict for me to be working with Cosmos on this one. So there's there's quite a few conditions that are being changed, but we've been really mindful and been engaging with ORC and letting them know we're looking at those things. They range from looking at the stormwater to looking at some planting. So there's quite a wide suite of changes we're making, and then we'll be feeding that back to ORC, and they'll let us know if they're happy with them. If they're not happy with them, there'll be some discussions. But once they're complete, that's when we can go to the 2 submitters that we've got and see if those address their concerns. That's the intention with that. But there's quite a list of changes that it would be difficult to discuss.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, thank you.
I suppose it'd be probably useful to clarify. There's a reason there's a list of changes, because we've engaged someone independent to have a look at the proposed consent conditions and sort of cast a practical lens over them. So we're going to be living with these for 25 years, so we want to make sure we're not agreeing to something now which is going to be either difficult to comply with or costly in the future. But we still have to make sure we're covering off what we need to in terms of the consent. So, and not changing it too much either. It's got to be generally in accordance with what was given to the submitters.
Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Chair, question probably for Jules. Like historically, do you get many submissions against or on the consents?
Well, we, through you, Mr. Chairman, we haven't. This is the first time I've been through a landfill consent in Mount Kui.
Oh, right.
The current consent was consented 30 years ago, so we're now in the new process. Normally, there are a lot of submissions to a landfill consent. However, in this situation, there's an existing landfill. Most of the current site's designated as a landfill site in our district plan as well. So it should be no surprise to anyone buying a section beside it that this was intended to be a landfill site. But we still have to work through the effects of a new cell in the consent, and there was a limited notification period process that where the ORC considered who was affected by this new consent in terms of looking at the difference from their current activity, and they've had the opportunity to submit, and hence we've got 2 submitters. It wasn't an open public submission process like DCC had for Smooth Hill, because that was a completely new landfill, whereas this is an existing operating landfill. That was that limited notification.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I
Yes,
thought
there
we were
is.
just doing the first bit and then the second. Just specifically on the refuse transfer station, it says that they're not required to capture the gas. But have we thought of it from a cost plus and minus long term and the risk that we would have with the gas? What do? We pay those
Pay ETS.
ETS
credits.
Have we put that into the consideration? Because while we might not legally be required, when I was in Wellington, I know it was a bigger and different, that was a money-making scheme for them. Have we got, now that we're putting a cell in and capture, is there, forget about the requirements, is it cost beneficial to grab gas? Or how much of a risk are we running, at the point when the credits go to $85, it's now worth it or something, so we're running the gauntlet? Have we considered that?
So through you, Chair, so at the moment, we're still in the consent phase. And although we're not required to do that, whilst Cuban and the broader team will be doing the scoping, those are definitely decisions and discussions that we will be raising and escalating decisions to the steering group.
And it'll be an economic decision, Brian, because one of our issues is we have a really, really small landfill. So it takes a long time to build up enough refuse to actually generate gas. So that's the cost of the system needs to be weighed up against the savings we'll make.
Yeah, I just thought that was fantastic. Thank you.
Can I just, sorry.
Yeah.
Through the chair, one of those last reports, was it not quoted that they only believed we could only capture 10% of the available methane at best anyway?
That's part of the analysis.
So therefore you'd only have to ever pay 10%. Yeah, still have to pay 90% carbon credit.
I thought that was on the unsealed one.
It's part of what we've got to look at in terms of the economics. See before we start. So I'll talk to you about this.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I'm back again. Okay. Yes, so in regards to the refuse transfer station, the decision was made that we're going to go ahead with the refuse transfer station. So the planning has started on the refuse transfer station. We have engaged also a company called Leach & Co for early contractor engagement over there. And that's where I think you've seen the report that came out as well from Leach & Co. Yes, in regards to some of the requirements from WSP for your construction of the first cell, they require that one of the requirements was permeability claim, and that we managed to source locally. So the project team has found that locally, and so that will just depend now on the consent. Go ahead. And then in regards to our professional services panel, we have engaged them for the design of the transfer station, and that's with our operations division as well. So it's a back and forth. So we talking to, and we ask them to prepare our tender documents as well. So just on point number 5, the interim filling option, I just had a word with Kelly as well in this regard. So he has approached the waste co. So I know the guys were actually quite concerned about this because of the landfill being filled up quite earlier than expected, and the transfer station wouldn't have been constructed in that time. But we've got some good news that the West Coast says the interim fill will last us about 12 months. The interim fill.
Potentially more, depending if our waste levels drop.
So that gives us enough time to construct the transfer station.
So this is your aha moment, Brian, missing a line. So those extra costs that Jason talked about, we've now got a bit more breathing space to construct the new cell than we originally thought. And it's a pretty reasonable price to construct as well. So it's much cheaper than Cardigan.
Can I just clarify then from that report 6 weeks ago that was quite alarming in the fact that we had 6 months of carting stuff out of here? Are we no longer going to have to cart stuff out of here?
We as long as we can get, we've got about 18 months to construct the cell, give or take maybe a wee bit less, but we're definitely not looking at carting like in that report, because that was waiting for confirmation that we could basically fill in the part of the kidney, which we've now had the report on, had the cost to do, and we're going to proceed with having that installed, so we've got more space.
So, because reputational risk, media scrutiny was well reported in the paper about the $187,000 a month that we will be paying.
Yes.
That's now gone. We can now say that it's zero.
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, there is still a risk. If there's significant delays in constructing the new cell,
yeah,
then that is still a risk, but that is now further out in time.
But the risk that turned into an actual is now just gone away.
It was always identified in that as a potential if there is technical issues with filling in, getting that extra space within our current landfill. That was identified in that report. And now we're saying the time frame for that is further out than was indicated it could be in that.
So I've got to be real clear on this one. Hand on heart, because I'm getting a fair bit of jippo from the public. The $187,000 a month, the overrun at Mount Cooley, we can quite confidently say now that on the present information that we have, we will now be able to contain it all at Mount Cooley. We won't be doing 187.
No, there is a risk that
there's a risk.
in a few, we've reduced the risk of him having to cart refuse. So now we've given ourselves more time to construct the new.
The 6 months.
So there is
has gone away.
no risk anymore. But it's a longer time frame.
6 months has gone away. Yeah, good.
Any other questions or points of clarification?
Sorry, I will go back because there isn't. What are we doing from a media perspective? Because the reputational risk that our organisation took, what are we doing to now go out and ameliorate?
Sounds like clarity is the answer. And we take the lead and we own the story.
We need to do as big a push on the way out as we got on the way in.
Yeah.
If I could suggest through you, Mr. Chair, I think the way to do that would be to get work done, have the extra capacity confirmed in the cell, and then say, now we've got this much long. And we're proceeding with that with urgency as well.
Yeah.
The only problem with that is that for the next foreseeable, well, for my political lifetime, I'll still be getting jippo and saying nothing. That won't be happening.
Well, we can through you, Mr. Chair, we can reiterate that the conversation we've had here this afternoon in our standing committee.
You, Councillor Ludeman.
Yeah, I'm probably going to reiterate that because there's some negative comments coming from, I guess, those that are using the dump and the comments that are coming back about it. That's, I think, a positive media comment from us that even that we're doing this, what we're doing and how it will be mitigated, just so as the public are aware, because there's really some, I mean, I'm hearing it, some real discussion. So even if we tell them the story of our process, we are working with the process, we expect that will happen. Own it, basically, instead of the community yapping about it the way they I can tell you they are.
Yep.
So it's.
So I think that the clear message from you, Councillor Ludeman and Mr. Mayor, is get some interim message out into the community. So I will address that with staff early next week and prepare a draft which will circulate to all of you before it goes out.
Either that or just do a booster statement this afternoon.
Either or. Rightio. Final questions of presenters? There are none. Thank you both very much. Appreciate that. Donna, back to your report on page 48.
Morning, everybody. You're not used to me reporting on a project level, are you?
I do.
So, I'll take that you have read the report, but I will talk you through it. There's been an awful lot of work that's been going on in the background already. Some of the work that we've done is we've formed a steering group committee, so that correct project management structure and decisions will be made by the steering group. I think to date you've had 3. They're fortnightly occurring at the moment. We have now got the detailed design locked in as an agreement by the steering group with different decisions and discussions. I met with a house removal company on site at 47 Ajax Street because I thought there could be the option that we may be able to move the house and sell it, and we can. So I think that's quite a positive outcome with that. I'm not saying we'd get a lot of income for it, but something's better than nothing rather than demolishing it. Thought long and hard about the fact that there's a housing shortage in the district and across the country, that it would be a shame to demolish a house when in fact someone might be able to utilise that. So I'll be meeting with a realtor in about 2 weeks' time, coming up with a marketing plan, but at this point in time the strategy I'm considering is a tender process where tenderers can submit their prices and that the conditions will be that the house must be removed before the 31st of July at the purchaser's expense. So there's an option with that. There's a, there's a public excluded report coming to the standing committee this afternoon in regards to Tokomaidero Training Centre, which I can't talk about in this section here. There's been a lot of work done with that as well. What else have I been doing? There's been an awful lot going on actually. We're getting a peer review from Recreational Aotearoa regards to safety requirements for the public and with the structural requirements of the building. I meet every week with Calder Stewart, and we've been having reviews with, as of Tuesday this week, we're now down to looking at the sound like walls as far as is it meeting operational needs and requirements, the lighting, the positioning of the reception areas, and next week we're starting to look at the soft furnishings as well. So that's sort of broadly covering the top section of the report. At this point in time, budgets, we're on track because we're only just in the detailed design phase. I have included a high-level timeline of deliverables for everybody, just to give you a high-level view. And as the project proceeds, the timeline will be more and more detailed, that you'll have visibility of this as well. If you're comfortable, I'll go to the risk register that I've, yes?
Can I just ask about the two entranceways, the doors, what's happening about that you said during the final design stage, please?
So the decision on that has been made that we will retain the two entrances because that was one of the risks on the register and the issue associated with the steering group. The steering group has made the decision we'll have the centralised entry lobby and then the two entranceways, one going into the pool, one going into the library. And the library one to mitigate the firewall issue that I have here, which I don't believe I've updated the issue log yet, oh, there it is in front of me, is that we're going to put a firewall drop curtain over the door so that we'll have double doors that open both into the pool and an automatic doors into the pool and into the library. And if there is a risk of a fire occurring, that it's like a curtain that just drops in front of the library as a protection mechanism. And because of that, we've added another fire exit door at the front of the building of the library portion.
So then, if it's just a fire curtain, is it not the estimated cost that has there?
It's actually between $15,000 and $20,000 versus $80,000.
Great.
And I'm confident I can claw costs back to accommodate.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's much better. Thank you.
So just going through the risks, if I may. So I'll just go through them point by point. We had the concept design. So that risk is now closed because that was the meeting on the 5th of December. The council made the decision after the special consultation process to increase the budget to 19.4 million. So that risk is now closed. The other risk that is closed was risk item 2. I sort of went right back to the beginning of the journey because I'm mindful that to give visibility that we sort of, I think it's essential that we have this in regards to the questions raised by members of the community in the special consultation process of the possible additional $1 million for foundation work. After speaking with our building manager, Malcolm, and also with Paul Stewart, and decisions from the chief exec, the decision is made because it's only voluntary at this point in time. We won't be proceeding with that, and Paul Stewart won't be making allowance for the structural works. So that risk is now closed. The next risk is risk item 3, the detailed design. This is an ongoing open risk, and I've marked it high, and apologies, I probably should have said, I've worked on a project management risk assessment matrix, which is on page 55, and I will be looking for feedback from you all if this is the type of assessment you'd like all the other projects to report on as well at this meeting. But by that, I just jumped to explain this. As a project manager, you consider the likelihood. So you go up the scale from very unlikely to very likely, and then you go across to the severity of the impact to the project. And where that lands gives you the indicator, just so you've got the understanding. So risk number 3, as you can see, it's red and it's open, because until the detailed design is fully completed and everything, the schedule of pricing is presented, there is a risk that the project could potentially go over budget, and in which case, at any time that this looks like this could be occurring, I can assure you, not only will it go to the steering group, it will be coming to council for decisions. Okay. Risk 4. This is the notice to the tenant to vacate the premises. I've left it as an amber risk. I mean, the likelihood of them not leaving within the time is low, but it is still a risk that if for whatever reason the tenant doesn't honour the letter that was provided to them, giving them the 90 days notice, it is a risk. So I've got that in there, I've got that open. That risk would close on the 30th of April, because that is the date the tenant has been given notice to leave. I have no knowledge that there's any issues associated with that, but it's not best practices that I leave that risk in. Risk 5 is the Tokomairo Training Centre, which I won't really talk to at this meeting because it's been presented as public excluded. But again, there is a risk that if the centre is not able to move by the 31st of July, which we have an agreement from both parties, subject to finding a suitable premises, this could delay the project, and it would have a severe impact on the project, because the project couldn't start. The physical construction couldn't start. Risk 6, the consent process and requirements. This is a high risk for time and budget. So initially, when the professional service provider gave me their high-level timelines of the consent process, I wasn't happy, because it was delayed many months in advance to what they'd originally discussed and agreed. So called a meeting, we sat around the table, and thanks to Liv, who attended the meeting as well with us, we asked some direct questions, and now we're back on track and on target with that. But it is still a risk, because even though the lodgements will occur in the times that we need to actually be approved and signed off for construction to start, if any Section 92s come from Otago Regional Council, or indeed from our council, there is a risk that it can delay the construction and starting the progress. Risk 7 is, I've put that in there because I do see this as a risk. This is the Milton Library moving to their temporary premises. So Debbie Duncan is working on that as we speak. We've sort of agreed that realistically the library would have till the 30th of June to move. My understanding is that Debbie is considering 2 premises at the moment, and she will be providing details to the steering group in the coming weeks on a decision for that. The other risk associated with that is that the costs associated with the temporary move are not part of this project. It's an operational expense.
And they're not budgeted.
and it's not budgeted. I just want to be very clear, it's not part of this project, it's not part of the budget. So then, risk 8, let me know if I'm going too fast, please. Risk 8, the notice of requirement. So this is part of the consent process, but I've sort of split them out because there's 2 different consents that we're actually going for. One is notice of requirement, and this really has the biggest risk where if there's submissions of the direct neighbours where they're opposing it. That could potentially delay us, similar to what the issues were with Mount Coe, where it could potentially go to a hearing process, which would extend it by 45 days. So just wanted to give you that clarity.
So has there been discussions up to now with those neighbours?
That's starting to occur now, I think, from memory, with our professional service providers with letters.
Great.
And we're having those open discussions.
Good, thank you.
There's 2 new risks that have come to hand since I wrote this report, which I thought was an opportune time to let you know. One is that the contractor, called Stewart, have advised that from them investigating the transformer, which is a power net transformer that we connected to, it's not large enough to cope with the size of the building and the electrical requirements. Now, that could be a significant financial risk for this project. So they are investigating the kilowattage and amp requirements versus what's available and having those discussions initially with the electricity provider. And I have said to Paul Stewart that if they'd like me to be present at those meetings, if it starts getting a bit challenging, then I'm more than happy to attend as well. I just want to let you know that is a risk.
Go through the second risk and then come back and take questions.
Yeah, sure. The second risk, which again is never scoped or budgeted within this project, is the IT requirements, which I see as a financial risk that was never even scoped in the original budget allowances. So we are working on that in the background to determine what sort of costs there is. There is a large contingency that I have in this project. Like it's a significant value. And I did that intentionally. But until we get these costings, I just want to present to you that these are risks.
And what sort of time frame, Donna, do you think until we get those costings back indicatively?
I would think definitely by the next risk insurance.
Next
meeting,
meeting.
I'll have to
Good.
provide it to
Yeah.
you.
Okay, questions? Obviously, we can only speculate at this stage until we've got firm numbers. Councillor Finch and Mr Mayor.
Thank you, thank you. You did put my mind a bit at risk by your last, that there is significant contingency in the budget. The transformer not being big enough, where is it sited? It's not going to be like on the main street when the asphalting's been done and muck that all up. That's somewhere else off the main.
It's the current one.
Trying to
I
remember.
can't actually remember off the top of my head where it is.
The current transformer's on Ajax Street and it's at the end of the walkway.
Oh,
that
yes.
goes through.
Yes.
And the pool is going to have all of its heat, HVAC and everything is going to be like heat pump based, so there's quite a big demand to run all of that. That's the biggest draw. Pumps and things as well, but the actual heating and ventilation will be the single biggest thing. Obviously, Milton's an air shed where you can't put a coal boiler or anything, so that has a requirement to drive those big heating and ventilation units.
So will the site of the transformer have to be moved as well, causing more financial burden?
Not that I'm aware of at this point in time, but until the discoverables are done as far as size, volume, needs, I can't answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr Mayor and Councillor Ludeman.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Donna, there's quite a bit going on there and I'm just casting my mind back. Has it ever been presented to the councillors before the risk of tenants holding out as such? I haven't, in my mind, it's sort of like, it's a newie to me. I did not know that that was a risk. Has it been presented to us before?
At the last standing committee in the report, I think it was just high level that we were going to be approaching them. So my style, and this is what I'm looking for feedback from, is I see particularly the tenant at Ajax Street, it's not a risk. It's not. They've been given the notice, we've done it within the legal requirements of the 93 working days.
It's a car park area too, it's not part of the main building.
But
So it's not really.
from a project management, put my project manager head on, it's always a risk until it occurs. There is uncertainty.
I was just putting my ex-real estate back on for a 12-year lease, thinking that it's a risk. But I hadn't been aware of it, so all I'm asking is, have we ever been presented? Because in my mind, it's the first time I've heard it. Then secondly, ballpark, I know we're going to get it in a month's time, but just let me know. Is it $500,000 for a transformer or 50,000? Or I don't have a clue what it is. How do we quantify the risk?
I really will be guessing.
Right.
I know
I suggest we don't speculate.
Yeah, I just want to ballpark because if it's a you know, one of the big ones, you think, holy hell.
Let's not speculate. Donna's indicated that we should have the number in a month.
Yeah.
So let's deal with it at that stage.
And it may not be all about cost through you, Mr. Chairman, because they get that back through line charges as well. That's part of the cost.
Councillor Ludeman.
Has solar heating been considered?
Through the chair, I can't answer that. That was the original consultation process before I started.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure specifically solar, but we've certainly had discussions with Calder Stewart about different heating options. Because there are other options that are more efficient, but there's risks that come with those. Like some swimming pools are heated by taking heat out of water mains that run past. And because Cromwell's done that. But I'm not sure that solar's specifically been looked at. We definitely looked at it for Bluther, it just didn't stack up.
I just wonder, with cost, everything.
Not specifically, sorry.
Okay, any other questions?
I'll just sort of something that Donna should be aware of. Years and years ago, at that very initial consultation, I think it was before your time, the owner of the house on the corner there, ordering it, was given a verbal assurance that they would get screening, fencing, noise reduction, so you'll be dealing with them, no doubt. And there was an assurance given,
So, without going to, so that's why I've identified a risk there with regards the direct neighbours. But there will be fencing.
Nice.
And there will be acoustics put into the building as well to reduce noise. And I should also let you know that we actually got some specialist reporting occurring as we speak. One is for noise pollution, one is for traffic and transportation, and the other is flood potential. I'm getting those additional for flood because Bolton's on a floodplain, so I thought it was worth spending that money to get those additional external reports done as well.
Donna and staff, thank you very much for the preparation and presentation of the reports. A lot of very valuable information we've received this morning, which gives us greater understanding of each of those projects. So, thank you very much.
Can I ask, please, just so I've got some feedback, are you wanting the risk registers put in like this for each of the projects? And you're comfortable with the matrix that we're using?
Please.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very helpful, Donna.
Sorry, question, there was the external reports, flooding, noise, and what was the third?
Transportation.
Thank you.
Traffic.
So we go all the way back to page 33, the recommendation that the R&A committee receives the capital project report is moved by Councillor Bolwheeler, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Does anybody feel like a 5-minute leave stretch?
Yeah.
Let's start that right now, shall we? Convene at 11:30. Seats, please. Haven't quite got a quorum yet, have we?
No.
Now we do, now we do. Right, item number 7, Linda. Protozoa report. Rightio, protozoa report, page 56.
Good morning, just presenting this on behalf of Daniel, who is away today. So I'm not the most technical expert, but I guess I will say, just looking at the report, that really it's been business as usual, no extremes to report. And one of the comments I'd just like to point out, which is detailed on page 63, is that our aluminium direction that we had received from Te Mara Arawai back in March 2023 has now been closed, and so we've complied with that direction to their satisfaction, so we can return to monitoring the supplies in accordance with the drinking water quality assurance rules. So we need to provide information to the community and consumers about what the results are. But it does mean less testing, which is a financial benefit, but also just means less communication to the public, telling them about something that is potentially not harmful for them in the short term. So that was a good outcome. That's been satisfied with our processes and also the progress we've made. Happy to take questions on anything else.
Thanks, Linda. Questions, starting Councillor Finch.
Thank you. For North Bruce, ongoing UV non-compliance, a plan is in place to remove the centre column within the clarifier. When is that going to be done, do you know?
We're waiting to hear from our process engineer. He's been away and is now had a medical issue that's delayed him a bit, but that will be imminent. And we also don't want to interfere with the plant during the summer demand.
Right, okay.
So I imagine it'll be soonish, but haven't got a date.
Just a quick one, I'll probably ask further about this this afternoon, but I was just reading about the aluminium ones in there, Linda, and you talk about the trial going on at the Moa Flat treatment plant and the carbon-based trial, and the last sentence there sort of surprised me. During the trial, the flocculation and clarification tanks will be bypassed. That doesn't, is that for the trial? That doesn't make it, I didn't think it was happening. The day we were all up there, that the water comes in after it's been, I guess, that's not, is that correct? I'm trying to remember as I'm sitting here. It comes into the treatment plant shed.
It's correct for the trial to date. I think they're trying to look at what would happen if they put that straight onto the carbon. So they might take a stream of raw water, put it straight onto the carbon and see how it works. We'd have to confirm that. But I know that was a discussion about a further step that would be removing the basically.
It would seem a bit counterproductive to have a trial with different water than you're actually producing now.
I think the thinking there would be potentially if the clarifier isn't actually adding much, it might be able to be moved somewhere else and paid for by somewhere else and putting into the rest of the treatment process. So that was one of the options they're looking at changing. But we'll get that confirmed.
Any other questions? If not, recommendation on page 56 that we receive the protozoa and bacterial compliance report. Moved Councillor Holwheeler, seconded Councillor Payne. All in favour? Against? Carried. Water operations, Linda. Page 64.
Chair, so this is our financial report for the first 7 months of this year, providing you an update on progress. I guess it's worthy of note that our operating deficit to 31 January is 4.1 million. Our budget deficit for the year is 3.5 million, so we've exceeded that. To some extent, that relates to the revenue. So there's a variance, significant variance there, which is really because the billing for rates happened in November, and it will regularise after last month's billing, is what I'm informed. That's related to the delay in setting the rates, and so everything's out of sync by a month.
What are the confidence levels like, Linda, for reaching the end of the year in budgeted position?
We're certainly doing our best. We're looking for every opportunity. We've got vacant positions we're carrying. We certainly, the team has got a much closer lens. In fact, people are seeing it as a negative because I keep on asking the question, how are we paying for that? But yes, certainly there's greater awareness. And given we last year exceeded our budget by 7 million, obviously we're looking to be there or thereabouts. When we struck the budget for this year, we didn't really know. We'd only been running for less than a year, so understanding what our actual costs were going to be was something of a calculated guess, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I'm pretty confident that we'll be there or thereabouts. If we can just hold the current position and be out by around 500,000, I think that could be.
And what do you see are the risks to that?
Well, there's always the unknown. All our sampling stuff looks pretty good. That's often an unknown for us if we have unexpected compliance needs that we have to do an extra sampling. And non-reactive, which you can never plan for when's the next leg going to happen. We've seen quite an upkick over summer. But it's those are the kinds of things. Most other things can be planned for or budgeted for or pushed out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I please get in my head, and I might have to get Sharon to come in here as well. It's 7 months, but let's say it's half the year, 0.6 million. So in my head, because it's operational, so you can't predominantly take, it's going to be paid for. So if we did 0.6 in 7 months, we do 1 million in a year, say. 1 million's 3% rate rise. We're going to pay it, it's operational, we're going to put it on debt. Am I looking at that right? The OPEX expenditure on that, just that one line, because I've got more questions. But on that one line, if it is 1 million, that's going to, it's unexpected, unbudgeted. So consequently, we're going to go out that next year and clip 3% on the rates.
Through you, Chair, if that was what happened and you wanted to maintain those levels in your budget to meet the actuals, then yes. But there's a later report coming where the team, like the whole council, we spent a lot of time with trade doing the cash flow reporting. And there's a special line in there for water ops, and that's actually looking at this stage to be under budget.
So the 0.6 is going to go down to
Negative 0.6 is what it's looking. But that can change as they, there'll be more cash flow reporting as we go. There'll be the next 3 monthly one and the next 3 monthly one.
I suppose I just take it linear. If it's gone there, it's going to keep going there. But okay, so
as Linda's been saying, though, they've been making every opportunity to save costs. So there'll be things that they paid at the beginning of the year that they're not going to be paying again. And so it should level out a wee bit. But
the hesitation and the reason why I'm labouring on this was that we were told, hey, give us 1 year, we'll work out what it is and we'll nail it. We did that. Now we're into year 2 and we're 0.6. Okay, let's just see, but we've got to closely watch that because another 3% on what was it? Whatever the rate rises next year, it's predominantly urban, that's going to happen. So another couple of things, so we went down those bullet points. There was year-to-date overhead costs for reticulation contractors. There's some meaty figures on there as well. What was it? But it says what the overruns or what the cost is, but it didn't say what we budgeted. So on that specific ones of the contractors, did we have we set aside a budget and therefore it's covered in this? Or are we looking that these are going to invariably fall out as overruns?
Through you, Mr. Chair, when we looked at part of signing the contract for the retic work was ensuring we had budget cover. And so that's that non-routine maintenance plus planned maintenance. Plus we have some small capital jobs as well. So we looked at making sure we had adequate budget to cover that. We don't have a distinct separate budget line for the contractor, simply because we have other non-routine costs that fall into that bucket of budget.
So similarly, sorry, I should have gone to the bullet point up first. I suppose consultancy charges of 585,000. It says what they are, but it doesn't say whether there is a budget or what the budget was.
The budget was about from one of these. The chart on the next page. Oh, it's not here this time.
Sorry.
Yeah, through
We've got
you,
the
Chair.
chart.
It was, we used to get a big list of all the costs and against the budget, but it was decided that to bring to this committee to remove all the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my problem is if I see it and there's no budget to, I'm thinking, holy hell, is that, because that's another 2% increase. If there is no budget for it and we're 585,000 over already, are we running into another 2 or 3% rate rise there to
I asked that question myself, Mr. Mayor, and then I read on in the report on page 72, which is the cash flow report. Right in the middle of the page there, it actually shows that from water activities there's a projected surplus of 650. And don't forget also that the significance of the rate not being levied until February would actually pose quite a different scenario to what's on the top of page 65.
I didn't put the two reports together, and I will admit that the first two letters are WT, I can't remember what it was.
Water treatment plant.
Water treatment was what I was bouncing when I got to that page, because I was certainly bouncing, but we'll get to that in another 7. So all I'm asking is, helicopter question, is any of this here really looking at significant unexpected rate rises?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, we are trying super hard to stay in our lane. And yeah, if it's going the way that we're projecting and the staff out there are projecting, then no, we're looking good. But you never know what's coming.
Through you, Mr. Chair, too, I've just remembered that consultant budget, I think, was 29,000, and I think it might be $571 for the year, which was never going to be enough.
585,000.
No, it was $29,000, and we've spent 585,000, which is why it's pointed out as a significant overrun. Realistically. And we're always going to have a need for consultants in our business, simply because of a lack of, well, I guess change, and it's such a detailed business for regulations. But we have made, so we've ended our relationship with Becca on a secondment basis. We had 2 staff who we released at Christmas, and we use 1 now, targeted work only. And we've got ongoing work to get our drinking water safety plans up to scratch, which is a regulator's requirement. And we use NRabbits as our process engineering expert for water.
I think there's a time and a place for consultants. I'm not having a go at the consultants per se. I just want to think that it defies logic that you would ask to cut down on consultants, cut down on staff, and then think the work's going to get done. So that's not what I'm doing. But here, 585 is a figure that we're going to hunt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Finch. Then Councillor Payne.
Thank you. One of my questions was about the consultancy charges that they will reduce going forward. So you've partially answered that by saying Becca now only has 1 staff member. So from now on, how much do you anticipate that we will be going down roughly? I know that's a big question, but just approximate.
Well, I guess Becca is our biggest lead because we had 2 people. The person that we have used traditionally, Emma Beth, has actually resigned from Becca and leaves next month. So that means we won't be using him. And it depends whether we need to get any specialist wastewater advice from somewhere else.
Okay, thank you for that. And on page 66, reticulation contract costs, July to January, and it's got for the planned maintenance. With all the breaks and repairs, should we have a bit more in that budget for our planned maintenance?
Yes, we have a reasonably generous budget, but some of that budget is being consumed by our non-routine maintenance, and also because post signing of the contract, we haven't set them off on a part of completing the planned maintenance to a schedule.
Okay, rightio. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think there was a great discussion around the finances and that, and I'm just picking up on Brian's very last comment, and I'm just wondering, are there any flags around level of service or risk around burnout for staff and all that sort of stuff? I mean, we are the risk, we've got to assess the risk, and I'm just wondering, have you got any concerns in that area?
I guess in terms of our...
the austerity is fantastic,
of course.
But you've got to balance it.
I think, through the Chair, that there's an opportunity in any operation environment to examine what you do and how you do it. And whether you work for a bank that makes $1 billion profit, which I have done, you have to operate to a budget and look for means to do more with less. And so when we were first set up, it was done as a paper exercise, is how I describe it. Now that we're actually in the game and playing it, then we're looking for every opportunity. Carrying vacancies that aren't critical is, there'd be some nice to haves there, would make some things a lot easier for some people. But yeah, getting the work done each day, I don't have any qualms about being short-staffed in that regard. I think we have adequate staff doing the work that's required if they are productive and managed well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, one thing we have discussed is we're going, once the new Balmoral to Peka scheme gets up and running, we're going to go from 3 treatment plants to 1, hopefully relatively easy treatment plant to run. So it's looking at that future requirement as well. Yeah. And it's a short-term where we're looking at this, that whether we need that staff member, then actually the work should change. There should be a step change in the work with those reduction in 3 treatment plants to 1.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Linda, and on that note then, if you're short-staffed, I see there's been a year-to-date overrun with salaries and KiwiSaver. What created that?
For you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that I don't run that budget, but they didn't account for the overtime that's required to run 24/7.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Herbert.
Thank you. And my question's going back to the consultants, because it is quite a considerable figure. And look, mine's a little bit pointed, but Ian Rabbit's is $85,000 for 7 months, predominantly on the 2 water schemes that are on board water notice, is my understanding, his work.
Some of his work, he also does training and coaching for the operators.
So just particularly on the board water notice, and because it says later on on page 66, how we probably working with Marflat and North Bruce. How do we avoid, or how do we know we're getting value for money, and how do we avoid being farmed? Is there any? I suppose my question is, what incentive does the consultant have to get us off the board water notice as soon as possible? Because if he's getting paid for it, the incentive is to hang around as long as possible.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the engagement of Ian Rabbits is a monthly fee for him being available, which means that the team the operators can call him. He's available all the time to us. He's not just paid by the hour. So if the schemes get off of boil water, that might mean that we can reduce the requirement for him, but he's not driven by that.
Yes, but there's no motivation for him to get us off it early, then, is it? Because the longer he stays on, the more he's paid. So the longer he's able to be contacted each month, what's the incentive? What's his incentive to get us off that boil water notice? He doesn't have one. Well, you can understand my thing. I'm sick of asking questions, and I'm pretty sure you're probably sick of answering the questions about the boil water notice, but we're entering into our 3rd year. So I'm sorry, but I'd like some traction. It drifts away, and we see that he's $85,000 for 7 months. What do I see? What have I seen? What tangible evidence have I seen at my end as a councillor that I've got value for money for that $85,000?
So, Councillor Herbert, your point is very well made, and I think the question we're going to pose to staff is to prepare more in-depth detail of consultancy engagement and consultancy cost.
And it's really around the motivation too. What's the motivation for them to help us to get off the boil water notice? Because at the moment, there's a motivation for them just. And I'm being cynical, but sorry, it's costing us money.
Yeah,
so
there's an answer there.
Yeah.
So let's get that detail in the next month's report. Other questions, observations? If not, do we have a mover for the recommendation to receive? Councillor Payne, Councillor Kennedy, all in favour?
Aye.
And against. Thank you, Linda. Right, the next two are our financial reports, starting with Greg on the Treasury report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning. Yeah, so this month the Treasury report is the new format as we discussed in the workshop a few weeks back. So yeah, I'm happy to take any feedback on that as to whether that information is enough, whether anything else is required. So I'll just briefly talk you through just each of the pages and what they show, and just what the changes have been made. So the dashboard on page 68. So I've added in a line of the projected borrowings to 30 June 2025. And you'll see that matches to the table at the bottom of page 69, which has the summary by activity area. So I've also added in a column for the year-to-date interest paid on the eligible debt to 28th of February. So that's 3.173 million. The cost of funds and debt table is below. That's prepared for us by Bangkok Treasury Advisors. And that just shows the trend of the debt costs decreasing. June 2024, at 5.23%, to 2025 being 4.31. The following page, so I put together a pie chart just breaking down the breakdown of the debt by activity area. So that matches to our 133.8 million borrowing balance as at 28th of February. So as you can see that if you add up the three water categories, that comes to 56%. So that's over half of what the total borrowings are. And the predicted borrowing to 30 June 2025 also include that. And that comes from some of the work that Trace on the cash flow report, which I'll cover shortly. Yeah, so I'd be happy to take any questions or anything else that could be included.
Yeah, Brian.
Thank you for that great report, Greg. And I know that Councillor Catherwood has long been waiting for page 69. And when I looked at it, in fairness, probably a good reason to. There's always our rule that you can borrow for a project. You've got to do a sewage plant, it's 20 million, so you borrow 20 million. But you don't borrow for day-to-day operation. And when I look down there, our community service isn't a project, it's day-to-day operational. And internal services, I presume that's the dividing of the overall cost of the operations of the organisation by the whatever. for their day-to-day operation. It's not like one day we did a $24 million operational, so we borrowed it. So I struggle to see how we can borrow $24 million for something that's just clicking over all the time. How we doing? Community service would be, let's say it's 100,000 a year. It's not a one-off project. It's community service. We're doing a bit of community service this week. We need to build a community service. We're going to borrow 100,000. I get it for roads. I get it for sewage, but I don't get it for internal services and community services especially.
Sharon to respond to that.
Through you, Chair, the community services stuff is like, that includes $10 million to the hub. It's community services, like it's our facilities. It'll be anything we've borrowed to do something at the library,
It's not
parks.
operations.
It's not.
Our heading community service for us as a council has always been
But
community services.
services for the council is our libraries, our parks, our pools, all those things are in there. It's any borrowing we've had to do for
The
those.
10 million
facilities.
I'll concede, cheers, but what about internal services?
Internal services is things like our IT. We have to borrow for IT. The additional, and I'm just thinking now we probably should split this out. The additional borrowing we've had for water ops over the last few years, was quite a bit of that we've had to borrow to catch up on our water operations. That's in there.
Because the auditors did say, they more than said that, they sort of, you're using debt to fund your day-to-day, and it shows that there, doesn't it? We are.
Through you, Mr. Chair, not really, well, yes, we have, but only over the last couple of years. But the debt and the internal services stuff is like money we borrowed to do upgrades to this building, or to buy IT equipment, or to buy cars. Well, we don't borrow for that, but that kind of thing. We can give in the next report quite easily, Greg, we can give a breakdown of which of our cost centres it is. Like, is it the admin office? Is it the IT department? Is it the finance department?
It's like historical, nothing can happen, but I'd certainly like to know if we are continuing to borrow to fund day-to-day operation. So tell me what's happening out in the future, because that's a cornerstone no-no for councils, is that you borrow for your day.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will be borrowing this current year, we'll be borrowing 4 point whatever million that we budgeted to borrow, that will be getting borrowed. And that'll go through as an internal services waters loan, because that's where we put the offset.
Yeah.
So that will definitely happen. No, this year actually it's 7 million, next year it's 4 million. So that will happen, but we will definitely, it's all shown separately. We've got little jam jars of borrowing everywhere. We can tell you every loan.
The big, 7 million, that's a meaty enough figure, and
Yes.
we've got to watch it as we get to the Plimsoll line. So yeah, we knew in our heart of hearts that we were borrowing for day-to-day operation. I like to, now that because we always asked, what is it, how much, where is it? And we've never had it until today. Can we get some forward projections, so, because we should be getting on top of that.
Those are our forward projections to the end of the year.
I know, I mean, yeah, we'll get that. I mean, not 10, you know what, we should be getting on top of this, the category borrowing for day-to-day operation. We should be trying to.
So two comments that I would make out of this conversation. The first one, Sharon's alluded to that it is possible to give greater breakdown on the internal services figure of 24 mil. So that will be included in the next one.
Yeah.
In terms of projections forward, Mr. Mayor, it'll be picking up the projected figure at 30th of June, and then flicking the pages of the draft for the LTP, and just seeing where that escalates going forward.
Do you think as chair of the audit and risk, I always thought it was a cornerstone no-no for council to borrow for day-to-day operations. Are you comfortable that we're doing?
I'm comfortable the council made the right decision for the right reason when it adopted its annual plan / LTP. The key thing is, again, come back to the comments that Sharon's made, is about monitoring that and making sure we stick to what we said we were going to do and don't borrow any more than. And that comes back to the conversation we had on the water operations before as well. Quite crucial. Councillor Makatamani.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I was quite happy to see that actually in there and broken down. We've finally seen where the losses have been capitalised. And we also, it was commented again, we've got to remember that last year when we set those rates, we agreed to borrow that $7 million to offset the rates. So there's no mystery there. We chose to do that. So that's where that it has to lie. It's the appropriate column.
Thank you. Point well made, Councillor Herbert.
And just adding to that, we actually asked the public and they agreed.
Yeah.
But can I just ask why, in the dashboard there, Trey, it's got, Greg, sorry, it's got our LTP forecast figure of 165 million, but we're actually saying now we're projecting it to be 156. We're actually we're better off by 9. That's right. Yeah, so the austerity measures or whatever, or the change of, it is fruition.
Yeah. Councillor Martin, did you have a question?
I did, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's probably one for Sharon. The economic development. What's all in economic development?
Economic development, there is, oh gosh, just in my memory bank, there is a loan in there for 1 year of the destination tourism, the 190 tourism marketing. There's also this historical loan from the Lawrence Chilpeka Aquatic Centre. It was the borrowing that was split over 3 ways because of different funding. Trey will tell you right now.
There's some loans in there for the cycle trail. And some more pool loans, but that's district wide, not just Lawrence one. But that's pretty much the bulk of it.
Thank you. Any other questions of Greg? If not, can we please have a mover for the recommendation on page 67? Councillor Herbert, Councillor Graham, all in favour? Aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Greg. Trey.
Good everyone. Just a few key points and a bit of an explainer around the 2 separate tables we've got here. So the first one is just statement of cash flow. So that's pretty much identical to how we put it into our annual reports. And the main purpose of this one is it doesn't give a whole lot of information, but it helps me figure out how much I think we're going to have to borrow. So that's the main purpose of this one. And then the one on page 72 is just how we think we're going to do at the end of the year from the categories you're used to seeing. So how I used to do in management accounts, I'm just doing that same report but forecasting it forward. A few other points is for that table on page 72, was asked to separate out the water costs. So the way I've done that at the moment is I've just separated out the water other operating. So that's things like your chemicals, your non-routine, your sampling, all that type of thing, but it doesn't include wages. So wages, overheads, that type of thing is still included in the other categories. If you'd like to see water as a whole, as a line item, then that can be done. It's just how I've done it this time around. In the comments on page 73, those are referring to how we're going to be at the end of the year, not how we're currently doing. How we're currently doing, those comments are in the agenda for later on today. And probably a final point is for the depreciation on page 72, the majority of that is roading, but also just to note that we don't fund that. We only fund bridge depreciation. So we fund a portion of that. But if you take that out, essentially we're predicting to be pretty close to budgets. And I suppose also to say, this is done on, the idea is to do this on a worst case scenario basis. So I've under predicted a lot of the income compared to how we're actually doing at the moment. And I've tried to over predict the expenditure. So on a pretty conservative basis. But outside of that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor McAtamaney.
Yeah, firstly, I just want to say to the finance team, yeah, we've been asking for this, and like I say, I'm pretty impressed by what they've done. And again, to Greg with the treasury stuff, I think it's a big improvement that we've been looking for quite a while. And just your final comment, Trey, I'm quite impressed that you're taking a sheep farmer mentality to the budget. Under promise and over deliver. It's the only way to run a budget.
So this is one of the most significantly changed reports we've looked at today, and it came out of the discussion that we had a couple of months ago. Is it meeting what you expected? Is there anything in there? Sorry, it's the opposite. Are there gaps in there that you would like to see filled, or are you comfortable with what you're seeing?
I thought it was a good report. It was I bounced at Sharon yesterday and then realised appreciation was only a appreciation figure. So yeah, it gave me once I calmed down and took the pills, I was all right on what I thought.
Any other comments or questions, just maybe directed to staff?
Another well done.
Yeah, excellent.
I have one code. Just on the, through that last meeting, if anybody needs any help with the awareness training, just give us your help. I'm up to date.
Good man. Take that advice. And with that, Councillor Graham, you're moving the recommendation. Mayor Cadogan is seconding. All in favour?
Aye.
Listen.
We now have to move into committee just for one very small item.
Do we actually need to go on to committee?
Technically we do, yes. Yeah. So you're moving in that respect?
Yeah, I would.
Councillor Volwell is seconding. All in favour?
Aye.
And we'll take